Hello and welcome back once again to Get Cookin'. So today we're making something that, for some reason, outside of the Midwest, whenever I mention this, no one seems to know what the hell I'm talking about. And that's a little dish that back home we like to call wet burritos. So what are wet burritos? Well, you'll see as we get going. Now, as we're going through this, you may say, hey, that looks like this or that looks like that. It's just this or that under a different name. And that's not exactly true, but I'll get into more of that later as we go. So, in the meantime, I'm going to flip the camera around and show you the ingredients we're going to need to make wet burritos. Okay, so the first item up we're going to need is not only 1, but 2 pounds of ground beef. You can make it with just 1, but I'm making a larger batch, so I'm doing 2 pounds of ground beef. You'll also need 1 packet of taco seasoning. I'm using McCormick, other brands are available, but you'll need at least 1 packet per pound of hamburger. You're also going to need 1 onion. This one's kind of a small one. I chopped up a medium-sized one earlier. Went ahead and chopped it in advance, as you can see there, just because I'm under a bit of a time constraint today with making this recipe. You'll also need a optional, but I put it in mine, bell pepper. And of course I went ahead and cut one of those up ahead of time as well. You're also going to need some shredded lettuce. I bought mine pre-shredded in a bag. If you want to make yours fresh, grab a head of lettuce, slice it up. You know how to do it. If not, I'll chop up a head of lettuce in a future video. You're also going to need 1 can of diced tomatoes. If you want to chop up a fresh tomato, go for it. I'm using diced again for time restraints. We will be draining this later, so keep that in mind. Something I don't normally put in my wet burritos, but my mother insisted on me putting it in there this time. I don't really like the flavor of it, but she does, and that is refried beans. They don't have to be fat-free. This is just what the store had available that wasn't like super spicy. They didn't have just traditional refried beans, but they had fat-free, so it doesn't really matter. You're not really going to notice it that much. Like I said, normally I don't even put this in it. I just go straight with the beef, but my mother's insisting on having beans in it for whatever reason, so there's that. You're also going to need either 2 of these 19-ounce cans or 1 large can. I think they have like a big 32-ounce can, but for some reason they didn't have it in this particular type. So I got 2 smaller cans. And this is red enchilada sauce. Now you may be saying, okay, I think I know where you're going with this, and isn't that just enchiladas? Again, I'll get into this more as we get going, but no, it's not the same as enchiladas. So there's those. You're also going to need some flour tortillas. Mission is my preferred brand. Other brands are available, whatever you like to get. I prefer Mission. I was actually able to find a fairly decent sized pack today. This is like a 16 count. Normally I just get the 8 count. And you will also need a fairly large bag of Mexican blend cheese. It doesn't have to be super big. You probably get like 1 or 2 of the smaller bags. You'd be fine. But for the most part, as always, those are our ingredients that we're going to need for this recipe. Now, we're going to move over to the stove, since I don't have to cut anything up, and we'll show you how to begin making wet burritos. Alright, so first step, we're over here at the stove. We have our heat on about a 6.5, almost 7. We're using our larger skillet. This is our deeper weld one, as opposed to the one we normally use, which is more shallow. Because we're using 2 pounds of beef again, along with other stuff, the other day when I used the shallow one, it was a little overflowy, so I'm using the deeper weld one just to be safe. This is heated up, so I'm going to go ahead and throw in our 2 pounds of burger. 1, 2. Alright, we're going to mash this up, let it brown. You guys have seen me do this 1,000 times. And right from the start here, we're going to throw in not all of our onion. We've got a couple other places we're going to use it. So we want to do roughly 1/4 to 1/3 of our onions. So I'm just going to kind of grab a handful here and kind of sprinkle them around like that. That should be more than enough to get us started. About like that. So as you can see, we still got a good amount of onion there, and I'll show you what we're going to do with that more later. We're also going to grab about, say, half of our bell pepper or so. Just for the record, I did actually cut up a second bell pepper because I didn't feel like one was going to be enough for everything I needed to do here. So I did chop up a second one, so that's basically, 1 handful is roughly about 1 bell pepper. We're going to use the rest of this up again later. So again, just set that aside. We're going to get this all chopped up and browned as usual. Alright, so we're going to let this cook up for a bit and get browning, and then I'll be back after it's all browned up, because you guys don't need to see meat brown for the 50th time in me cooking with you. So there's onions, bell peppers, meat. I'm not doing much seasoning on the meat because we're going to be putting in the taco seasoning a little bit later. So no real seasoning going into this other than the onions and peppers. So we're going to let this brown up and then we'll be back. Alright, so we finished browning and draining our meat. We're now adding it back into the pan. I'm going to try and get all the onions and stuff out of the strainer as well. Again, that's all stuff you guys have seen me do thousands of times before. I don't think I really need to show it to you over and over again. Now we're going to reduce our heat down to about 5 to 5.5. We're going to open up our 2 packets of taco seasoning, and then basically we're just going to follow the directions on the taco seasoning. Just double everything up. So there's 1 pack of seasoning. There's our 2nd pack of seasoning. Now each packet requires 3/4 of a cup of water, so I'm basically just going to put like 2 cups of water in here. So there's 1. A little bit extra ain't going to hurt anything, and that way we know there's enough to cover everything. So now we're going to give this a stir. One reason I don't usually use this pan too often is because for some reason stuff likes to stick to the bottom of this one, even though it's a Teflon coating. Don't know what that's all about, but that's what happens. So I usually don't use this one, but for this, as you can see, it's already like more than halfway up. That would be right at the top edge of our other pan. And we still got more stuff to add to this. That's why I chose to go ahead and use the deeper one. Alright, so that's all mixed in. Now the instructions say, stir in seasoning and water, bring to boil, reduce heat, and simmer 5 minutes. So since we got 2 packs in there, we're actually going to simmer it for 10 minutes. And then we'll be back to show you what happens next. So we're just going to, like I said, I turned this down to 5. I'm going to turn it down to 4.5, and we're just going to let it simmer for about 10 minutes. So I'll see you guys in 10. Alright guys, so it's been a little over 10 minutes, probably a little bit closer to 15. And as you can see, most of the moisture is out of this, which is basically what you want. I mean, there's still a little bit, obviously, but that'll reabsorb into the meat here in a second. Alright, so the next step, normally I would be done with this, and this would be what would be going into the burritos. But like I said, my mother wanted refried beans added, so I went ahead and opened up our can of refried beans. And now we're just going to add it in with this meat. Like so. Now normally, if I was only doing 1 pound of meat, I probably wouldn't do this even at her request, because I don't like a lot of beans, and that would be a lot of beans with 1 pound of meat. However, with 2 pounds it should mix in a little bit easier. So basically we're just going to mush it up, mix it in, and kind of give everything a nice even coating of beans. Then we're going to let that heat through for a couple minutes. Now with 1 pound and 1 can of beans, it would actually pad it out quite a bit more. With this, as you can see, it really didn't add a whole lot to it. With 1 pound, you could definitely tell the difference. With this, not really. But there we have a nice amount of beans. Alright, so we're going to let that heat through real quick. And then as soon as that's ready, I'll be back to show you how to finally assemble everything. Also, I went ahead and opened up our can of diced tomatoes, and I strained the juice out of that into the sink and put them in a bowl and set them aside, so those are ready to go. So like I said, we're going to heat this through real quick, and I'll be back to show you the next step. Okay, now this looks like it's heated pretty well through. You can see it bubbling up, which is about what we want. Just going to give it one more quick stir. You can see all the steam still coming off of it. So I'd say that's pretty good. So now what we're going to do is turn off our heat and set this aside. And we're going to preheat our oven, because we are going to be baking in the oven next. So turn your oven on to preheat. About 350 should be good. So let's go ahead and start that. Now we're going to move over to the other counter, and I'll show you how to start assembling everything to go into the oven. Alright guys, not sure what happened with the camera there, but it froze up. It wouldn't let me stop recording. And then once I thought it stopped recording, it was still recording, and the whole thing just kind of locked up, and I had to completely reboot the camera. and I lost all the footage that I had just shot. So basically I'm going to try to show you the next step now. So basically what you want to do is get your tortillas, like so. And we're going to put about a spoonful of our beef mixture onto it, so I'll show you that in a second. So there we have about a heaping spoonful. And we're going to take some of our diced onions. You want to be a little sparing with these because we do need more later. If you have another onion, you can chop it up if you like a lot of onions. Don't really worry about it. Put a little bit of onion in there, a little bit of our green peppers. You can be a little less sparing with these. We don't really need too many more of them. Going to do a pinch of our tomatoes, like so. And then a pinch of our lettuce, like so. And then again, being a little sparing with this, a pinch of our cheese. Don't worry about not having much cheese in there because we're going to have more later. So now once all that's into the tortilla, kind of want to give it a pinch to space everything out vertically. Kind of roll it all towards the one side. You want to basically move your tortilla towards over all the filling, and then kind of tuck it under and pull it back to you. And you're going to fold your sides in like so, and like so. And you're going to roll your tortilla away from you, and keep tucking in the sides as you go, until you have a nice rolled up burrito like that. And then we're going to place it into our cake pan, and I'm going to show you what that looks like now since our video screwed up earlier. And there we have it. So basically you want to put, I got about 7 in this cake pan. This is a 9 by 13 I believe. So basically you just want to make enough burritos to fill up the pan. I did 5 this way, 2 this way. If you have to pull them back towards you a little bit and push them over a little bit to crush them all in there, do it, don't worry about it. Alright, so we got our burritos in our pan. I ended up with 7. I had enough stuff left over to do probably 2 more burritos. Luckily, because I was able to show you this backup one since the camera froze earlier. I'll probably just eat that one by myself. I don't want to dirty up a whole nother pan making like 2 extras. But basically once you got your pan lined here, I'm going to take 1 can of our enchilada sauce. I only opened up 1 of these right now in case it's more than enough. Usually I try and get the bigger can, but this might be enough for what I'm doing. And you're basically just going to drizzle it over top of your burritos. This is what makes them wet burritos, because you're making them wet. And along the edge. Actually, 1 can might be enough. Maybe. Looks like it might be. Alright. We're going to give that a little shift around just to make sure there's coverage everywhere, which it looks like there is. Alright, so 1 can was more than enough. Having the second can as backup, don't panic. You can use it for something else later. You can make this meal again. But for what I'm doing, the 1 19-ounce can is enough. Alright, now, as I said, you want to be a little bit sparing with your cheese because we're going to now put a layer of cheese around the top here. Like so. You want to make sure you got enough to cover it, so that's why I say go sparingly on the inside, because you're going to have a lot on the outside. You don't really need a whole lot on the inside. In fact, you can skip putting the cheese on the inside if you want to, because there's going to be plenty of it right here. Alright, let's make sure you got a nice amount of coverage here. Give it a little fan out, just be sure you got a decent amount. Looks good to me. And as I said, you want to go a little bit sparing on your onions. I mean, I end up with quite a bit here, but then we're just going to sprinkle what we got left over the top here. Just like that. And if you got any green peppers left, go ahead and sprinkle those over the top too. You don't need to do this if you don't want to. It's just a way of using up whatever's left. Honestly, like I said, I got enough meat mixture for a whole nother burrito. I probably could have used those for that. If you want to put your leftover tomatoes on top, you can. I'm not going to. I'm going to save those for the other burrito. And then that's it. Now this goes into the oven at 350 degrees, basically until the sauce is heated, the cheese is melted, and the onions and vegetables kind of start to toast up. So we're going to pop this in the oven, and I'll be back when it's ready. Probably 15-20 minutes or so to show you what the final product looks like. Alright guys, hopefully you can hear me over the noise of the dishwasher in the background. I do apologize for that. It's been about 20 minutes or so, and I was kind of waiting for the sauce to start to bubble a little bit, but it's not bubbling. But as you can see, the cheese is melted and it's actually starting to get a little bit toasted along the edges there. So that's about where you want it, nice and heated all the way through. I'm going to let this sit for just a couple minutes before I plate it up, because it is hot and I don't want to burn myself. So maybe like 5 minutes or so, let it sit and rest, and then we'll be back to dish it up, and I'll show you guys the final stages. Okay guys, it's been about 5 minutes or so since this has been cooling. Again, sorry for the dishwasher noise. I needed to get that going. It's completely full and needed to be ran, so just had to deal with that in the background. I do apologize for that. So this has been cooling for about 5 minutes, and as you can see, we kind of have our first burrito there, another one there, another one there, another one there, another one there, and then our two back ones. So I'm going to try and attack this back one here. I already burned myself once pulling this out of the oven, so I'm going to try and be careful pulling it out of the pan. You just kind of want to break them away from the sides a bit. And then try and find the seam between the cheese and the tortillas and everything. You don't want to rupture any of the other tortillas. Kind of want to keep everything whole and together the best you can. Said my mother will probably come home and just run a knife right through the damn things, not paying attention as usual, and screw everything up anyway. But there, we should be able to get in under this now. We're very, very careful. So I'm going to turn it around a bit so you guys can see better. Now if I do this right, maybe someday I can lift it out onto the plate just like that. There we go. So there we basically have our wet burrito. Now if you get these in a restaurant or anything, they do usually look a lot better than this. This is just how I make mine. So now we're going to move over to the table, let you guys see me eat it as usual. So I'll meet you guys over at the table. Alright guys, so here we are at the table with our wet burrito. Now, I said I was going to go into why this is different than what you guys might be thinking. Basically, you might be saying, Rev, you just made enchiladas. No, this is not an enchilada, and I'll explain to you why. Growing up, this was a wet burrito, an enchilada was something different. Now, over the years, anytime I've described a wet burrito to somebody who didn't know what it was outside of the Midwest, for example, when I was in college and I mentioned a wet burrito, everyone's like, what's that? When I described it, they said, oh, that's enchiladas. And I always had to say, no, it's different than an enchilada. And when they asked me how, I could never really explain it. I believe one time I did hear it referred to as something other than an enchilada and a wet burrito. And I forget what term was used, but that was actually basically a wet burrito under a different name. But for the life of me, I can never remember what the guy called it. But that would basically be a wet burrito if I could remember what it was called. And then some of you guys from the West Coast, like California and whatever, might know what this actually was before me making it. But basically, over the years, I've determined the differences between an enchilada and a wet burrito is, first of all, the tortilla shell. Wet burritos use flour tortillas. They're bigger. Enchiladas tend to use the corn tortilla shells and are smaller and more tightly rolled, kind of like a cigar, where these are made like a burrito. The second thing is, every time I've ever had enchiladas, they've been more heavily bean-based, more of the refried beans than a meat mixture. And every time I've ever had a wet burrito, it's been mostly meat, like I said, with a little bit of beans like I did today. But usually it's more meat-based than bean-based. So those are the two main differences between enchilada and wet burrito. Wet burrito, larger, flour tortilla, more beef than bean. Enchilada, corn tortilla, smaller, rolled tighter, a little bit less filling because it's usually just the bean mixture and occasionally like chicken or something. And it's just like that inside the tortilla and then rolled up really small. Like I said, not much in the way of meat or other fillings. So this is a wet burrito. It's not an enchilada. If anyone happens to know what the other term I might have heard of this referred to as that I can't remember, comments down below, I would appreciate it. So let's dig into this and let you guys see me actually eat it so you know that it's good. Also, this would be the time you would add in your sour cream or whatever. You don't really want to have the sour cream on when it's baking because it's cream and you don't want it to really be heated. But yeah, anything else you wanted to add into it or top it with, like if you wanted to wait and top it with the onions and green peppers and olives and whatnot now, do it now. I put it in when it's baking just to kind of soften them up a bit. But yeah, this would be the time to top everything is before you actually eat it once it's plated. So again, as you see, we got our wet burrito, or my version of a wet burrito. And we're going to cut into it with our little fork here. Got some gooey cheese holding on there. I don't really want a bunch of stringy stuff coming up. So here we have a piece of our wet burrito, and as you can see, all the filling and stuff in there. Cheers. That is damn good. That's what I remember wet burrito tasting like. Again, the restaurants that I used to get these at when I was a kid, obviously they've been making them for years, have special recipes, different things they put into it. The restaurant version is always going to be better than whatever I make. Well, not all restaurants, but as far as wet burritos back home, any restaurant I go into back home, wet burritos are always awesome. Mine aren't bad. They fill the void when I'm like, oh, I want a wet burrito, I can make my own. Are they like the restaurant? Well, fairly close, but the restaurant's always better. One, they're just, like I said, they've had more time to prepare and master their craft. Two, they have different preparations, better ovens, things like that. But you know, when you're not home and you're in a different state, different coast, and no one knows what the hell you're talking about, you know, make your own. It works. Alright, so there you guys have it, wet burritos. Again, as always, thank you guys for watching. Remember, like, comment, subscribe, share the video. Links are down there in the description. Again, if you make this yourself and you have a suggestion for how I can improve mine, or you just want to show me a picture that you made it, send them to me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, whatever. The links are up there somewhere for all that stuff. Yeah, maybe future episode, if I get photos and stuff like that, I'll be like, hey, here's a photo of somebody making it. I'll give you a shout out. If you got your own YouTube channel, I'll give you a bump, whatever. Otherwise, like I said, again, as always, thank you guys for watching. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, share the video. Links are in the description. And until next time, get cooking.